Oh,
This conference will now be recorded.
welcome to the May 12th, 2026 Arlington Senior Democrats lunch. I'm Bob Platt, and we've had a very exciting weekend with a big court decision on Friday. Uh, and we are here with both Joe Schiarizzi, who is a candidate for the 7th Congressional District, and Julie Farnam, who is a candidate for the Arlington County Board. Joe is the first one up today, and he is a, a inventor, affordable housing advocate, and community organizer. He chaired the Falls Church Environmental Sustainability Council. He's the founder of Solar Punk VC, which is a investment syndicate for climate-focused startups, and I'm sure he'll tell you more about himself. But without further ado, I will hand this over to Joe.
Do I come over here?
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay. All right.
You're one power cord away from
Okay. All right.
the audience.
Can I turn it so I can stand up?
Yes, yes, you just have to tilt it back. And
Yes, sir. All right.
he's technology literate.
Oh, there we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Schiarizzi. I was running in the new 7th, which if it doesn't exist, I won't run. But I am still running right now, as of right now, and I'm still fighting, and I'm still hoping that Democrats will continue to stand up to Donald Trump's unprecedented gerrymandering and his attempt to rig the midterm elections. So I'm still holding on that we're going to get these maps that the people voted for, and I'm going to keep fighting until absolutely every avenue has been taken down for our ability to use those new maps. So I got a great introduction. I'm an affordable housing activist. I was one of the founders of YIMBYs of Nova, which is the largest affordable housing action group in the region. And I care a lot about the environment and housing. I'm going to spare everybody the whole stump speech today because I don't know if I'm really running or not. But we've ceased accepting donations for now until we hear back from the U.S. Supreme Court. And our plan is to refund everybody who's contributed to our campaign so far. So since we're in Arlington, which has some of the highest rents in the entire country and has become one of the hardest places in Virginia for sure, and even the U.S. to live because of the cost of housing, I just wanted to talk about affordable housing a little bit since that's something that I care a lot about. So we've got the Democratic Senior. What's the Arlington Senior Democratic Committee? Got it. Okay, so I figured this would be a good place to ask everybody about your experiences owning a home, and maybe just a show of hands, who was able to buy their first home in their 20s? Everybody. Not here. Okay. Okay, and who was able to buy their first home in their 30s? Okay, everybody already had it. Good. Okay, so as of this year, 2026, the average age of a first-time home buyer, not just in Arlington, but across the country, is now 40. Can you imagine how different your life would have been, how much harder it would have been to build equity, to engage in civics in your community, to start a family? It would have been if you hadn't been able to buy a home until you were 40. That's now the reality for half of our country, right, or more. So I feel like this is a housing crisis that we need to declare a national housing emergency, which is why I decided to run for Congress, and that a lot of our leaders at the federal level are treating this like it's a local only issue and putting the burden to build more affordable housing on communities like Arlington and not taking the issue seriously as a national issue. So that's why I started running for Congress, and I hope to continue working on affordable housing here in Arlington and across Virginia, whether or not those new maps exist. At a national level, I would like to see the Faircloth Amendment repealed so that we can build affordable housing and public housing for troops. The Faircloth Amendment was signed in the 90s that puts a cap on the number of public housing units the federal government is allowed to build. And it has stopped us from building any new public housing projects for several decades now. And I think that's a mistake. We should be able to build public housing, especially for veterans, the disabled, and the elderly. And we also need to make sure that we're investing in housing along transit corridors. So the federal government is paying hundreds of millions of dollars to the metro system, to Amtrak, to many other public transportation lines across the country. And we should tie that funding to building more homes and denser, more affordable housing in the places that everybody is collectively investing in transit. Right? We all pay our taxes for the transit for everybody. So if you have land there, it should be allowed to build more affordable housing on it. And I also support YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard, which we just got through in Virginia, which is awesome. It allows churches to build affordable housing, especially for seniors and disabled, on their land. And we should be able to do that nationally. As a Christian, I feel compelled to provide for the poor, and that's what my religion calls me to do. It's against my religion to deny the needs of the poor, and because of that, I think freedom of religion and the expression of that should allow us to build affordable housing on church grounds and mosques and temples around the country. So there's a lot more we could be doing federally for affordable housing. That's why I was running in Virginia 7, and I hope to continue working with you all on affordable housing issues in Arlington and beyond. So thanks for having me here today. Appreciate it.
So as moderator, I get the first question.
Okay.
Please.
It's the only pay I get for this. Okay, so could you give us a feeling, not necessarily from your own personal experience, but also for all the other candidates in the 7th, your reaction to the court decision, how much you sort of gave up in terms of your time and career and life for the campaign so far, and what lessons you've learned from it.
Okay. Yes. So the question is, how much have you given to this campaign? Your reaction to the Virginia Supreme Court decision on Friday, and then what comes next, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me on Friday, we had campaign events scheduled all weekend, and we got this decision on Friday that the new maps are not going through. I think it was an absolute miscarriage of justice. The people voted. Every other state going through redistricting right now that the Republicans are pushing through and gutting majority districts and gutting, Democratic seats by gerrymandering. They've pushed that through whatever their Supreme Court says. The Utah Supreme Court is being packed, right? And the Republicans are playing dirty, taking away these seats and trying to rig the midterms so that we don't have checks and balances in this country. And I don't accept that. Right. So a lot of the candidates have said, oh, we're going to accept the court decision. I don't accept it. We're still campaigning. I'm still here. And we're going to keep going until every avenue has been exhausted. And I think that Spanberger and the House of Delegates should get more active and do whatever they can to make sure that the voters' voices gets heard. If they can't, then, so be it. We'll do our best to flip seats in Virginia regardless. For me, I put everything into this campaign. I've called every friend and family member that I have asking for money, because that's what you have to do. And that is burning social capital. I have put my entire career on hold. I'm not a politician. I don't, campaign for a living. I don't ask people for donations for a living. I am an engineer. I'm an inventor with 2 patents, and I've put all of that on hold while I've been running. So I hope to be able to go back to that and continue to be active, especially around affordable housing things in my community. But it will be a big change. But I haven't quit yet.
Well, I'm surprised to hear you had patents. I started off as a patent lawyer.
Oh, that's great. I have 2.
But tell us about your patents for a minute.
Sure. So I have one that is on the process of generating 3D models. given a 2D representation, so you can take a picture of something and generate 3D models used in architecture, used in chemistry. Some universities using it for chemistry-related things. And I have another I filed to allow accounting software to be more efficient and for banks to create accounts for people who haven't signed up for an account yet. So you could send money to people whether or not they have opened an account, that service, just to make money more efficient.
That's great. Great. Yes,
Not
Paul.
very exciting, but they're interesting to me as a math guy.
Exciting to me. Go ahead, Paula.
Yes.
I have sort of, do you have a persuasive, non-confrontational way of replying to, like, I was just at dinner with friends last night, and they live in one of the nicest neighborhoods of Arlington, and you know, and made the remark about, can you imagine that if we sold our house, they could put one of those horrid sixplexes here, and how idiotic that would be, and you know, that kind of thing. And you know, I have sort of two responses that I've tried. One is look across the street at the McMansion that went up that takes every bit as much space, and two, the whole reason for the zoning that was turned over was racist to begin with.
Right.
And you know, these are good people. They are, you know.
Of course,
so
of course.
Are there any arguments that help? I know one concern that they would have, that they reply with, is we'll take it apart.
Sure. Sure. I mean, look, it's totally valid, and there are a lot of people, especially in Arlington, when missing middle pass, that are afraid of change or afraid of certain negative impacts of that change affecting them. And I think those fears are not really based in reality. The reality is not having more affordable housing is causing so much suffering in our communities. And I usually try to talk about the data, talk about how much harder it is for young people right now, and how much the suffering is being caused by those sixplexes not existing. And there's quite a few really great books that I love: The Color of Law, The Happy City. I could recommend many, but there's a lot of people that have dived into these origins of single-family home only zoning, and that was created specifically to enforce racial segregation. And that's the reality of the situation we have to contend with. So we should get rid of parking minimums, get rid of everything that was created to enforce racial segregation, and come up with a better way to move forward together that doesn't have traffic backed up on every tiny street. But let's address those concerns together. Let's build the infrastructure for the new homes, and I think that America can build again. So that's usually where I leave it.
Yes.
Yeah. So. This is your first time running for office, so you've been involved in campaigns. Well, was there anything that you said after about 3 weeks into this, like, God, I never thought I'd have to do that.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. As soon as we launched, we were inundated with requests from special interest groups, from political PACs, from even neighborhood communities to fill out endorsement applications. Okay, so we have a list of over 150 endorsement applications, from Sierra Club to community groups to unions, a lot of groups that I love, actually, that I look up to and that I want to work with. But all of these processes to get their endorsement are secret, right? I fill out a form, I send it to them, and then they decide to give you the endorsement or not. Right? And they don't actually post what promises that a candidate has made to them, which is crazy to me. Basically, I've never seen a congressional candidate, I've never seen any candidate post hundreds of different applications for endorsements. Have you ever seen that? Sure. That's fine. I've never seen a congressional campaign, or any campaign for that matter, post hundreds of endorsement applications that they filled out.
Right. But isn't it true that, I mean, a lot of them do have a litmus test pledge, like the tax reform people that,
Yeah.
like, I promise never to raise taxes during my
term
Sure.
of elected office and so on.
So some of them might have a public promise like that, but a lot of the promises that people are making to get endorsements are being made behind closed doors, and there's a secret thing. So we don't even know how many, even if you didn't get an endorsement, we don't know how many hundreds of promises all of our candidates are making to all these different special interest groups.
How many did you fill out? How many did you have to fill out?
I had not filled out many, and I had filled out about 150. I think 165 was our final thing. We didn't send them all in, but we had this plan where everyone that we send in, every promise that we make, we're going to post publicly and have an archive of them on my website. And so that was something that I was very shocked to learn, that people are going to a data center PAC and promising to support data centers, and then going to a clean energy PAC and promising not to. And they're just, getting endorsements and doing both of these things behind closed doors. It is shocking to me. It was shocking. So that was one thing I learned, that I want to hold people to a higher standard from here on out. And I learned a lot about campaign finance law and how the candidates that are dropping out right now have the option to keep their money and spend it on other candidates' races. And I think that's kind of wrong.
It's federal money.
Yes.
You had to follow the federal rules.
So yeah, I learned a lot of things about how corrupt politics can be, and I have some ideas of how I want to improve it because of that. So thank you for that great question.
Going back to the housing, the
Yes.
law in the 90s, what prompted the limits?
Yeah, so that's about the Fair Cloth Amendment, which was signed by Bill Clinton, and we had this problem with public housing projects where they were concentrating poverty in some certain areas, right? We would say, okay, we're going to put
green in Chicago.
Yes,
Right.
we're going to put the projects, right, and that's where the term the projects came from, on the other side of the highway, isolated from the rest of the city, and we're going to move all the poor people there and concentrate their poverty. And that created a lot of suffering, and was very racist at times in the policy decisions made. And it led to Democrats and liberals saying, okay, we can't concentrate poverty, no more public housing projects. And this is how they came up with as a solution, which is banning them outright. But instead, we could learn from those mistakes and not isolate poverty, not concentrate poverty, but still have mixed use or mixed public-private housing.
For instance, somewhat the same thing,
Yeah.
Harris traditionally, after World War II, the public housing was
Right.
outside the urban.
Right. A lot of single-family home neighborhoods in the U.S. were created as post-war public housing projects. Right. That's where Donald Trump's money comes from. Is his grandfather taking public money to build public housing projects and then saying, actually, I own them. Right. And that's how the Trump real estate empire started. So we can learn from those humongous mistakes and build public housing for teachers next to schools, build public housing for firefighters next to the firehouse, work with churches and use their land. We have an excellent project called Terwilliger Place here in Arlington, which used to be a American Legion center. It was a one-story American Legion post.
Down on,
Right. Terwilliger Place. It was a one-story American Legion post, and then we used that land and turned it into 160 units of affordable housing, 50% reserved for veterans, or with veteran preference, rather. And that can be a model for what we do everywhere in the country, where we could take the land, if they want to, at VFW posts, American Legion posts, Amtrak stations, all this federally funded land, or from organizations that have a charter from Congress, and build public housing there. That isn't concentrating poverty, that's high quality, and doesn't have kind of racial undertones.
A friend of mine, she's 90.
Yeah.
She was walking independently till a few months ago, and she lives in the one that's by, I think it's a Methodist church across from Boston Metro.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna mention, that's by
And
my
that's
house, yeah.
absolutely perfect location.
It's
for people
beautiful.
that don't have cars. All ages are there, all ages.
And it's not a slum. It's not a, you know, what you would think of as like a 90s project, you know? It's got a fantastic child care center.
And she's chosen to do that because she doesn't want to, go to a more, let's say, restricted place,
Right.
So she and her dog live there and get by with virtually no money. And she said, I ride to Palm Forest Church right here, but everybody's really nice.
I love that situation. I love that she gets to age with dignity
Totally,
in a place
totally.
that she's familiar with, and she gets to
Public transportation, it's right there. It is across the street.
that can be an example for what we do everywhere. And we just have to change we just have to tweak a couple laws. We have to tweak how we fund public housing, and we can address this crisis head on in a way that actually meets the needs of our community. So that's why I wanted to run for Congress is those kind of projects, and make sure that that is legalized and funded in as many places as want to do it.
I was just going to add building
Yes.
on that because I live right there. And what I've also noticed is that now when I hand out, sample ballots at the polling site every election, we have a few more voters of color too.
Mhm.
It's a very white area, and
Great.
we now have a few more people who are different. And part of this may be for our next speaker as well. The church also opened when it was before people started moving in, but when the construction was finally complete, because the construction was inconvenient for all of us, in the neighborhood. And they let us tour it, which was lovely. And they talked about also the difficulty of working with the county for it, that it wasn't, it worked and they got it through, but they felt from their perspective harder and longer and more expensive than it needed to be. Yeah.
Well,
And the reason for that,
the law is the extension is not what worked on it.
right? So the reason it was more expensive is because there was zoning that they had to overcome. They had to show,
They found a cemetery.
right? They had to show all of their plans ahead of time. They had a lot of rules that they had to follow because it wasn't a by right development, and they also had to find other sources of funding to finance it, right? So they had to get several different types of loans, several different types of grants, and they probably spent $1 million going after all the loans and all the financing. If you have a streamlined system for that, like we now have in Virginia because of the YIGB bill, the S in God's Backyard bill, then you can go to one source of funding and finance the whole thing and do it millions of dollars cheaper. That means more affordable homes.
On that point, Arlington
Yes.
does not have a housing authority. It works with nonprofits.
Right.
Yes.
Arlington Housing. And that is not a governmental agency.
Sure.
So I guess I've got a two-part question. One is, how would under the state law, how would these individual projects be financed?
Mhm.
And B, how do you feel about Arlington not having a housing agency to own housing?
Sure. So government owning housing, sure, if they want to do that, that's up to the people of Arlington, right? I'm not a citizen here. I don't vote here. So let's leave it up to the citizens. Okay. Maybe some cities that works, maybe some it doesn't. That's not up. I don't think for me to decide. I think that should be a local thing. But for the example of Terwilliger Place, the American Legion Post is privately owned by the American Legion, and the people there, mostly veterans, and that project was financed partially privately, but partially from the Virginia and Arlington housing funds, and those were low interest loans instead of grants. So the taxpayer gave a loan to that project, built 160 affordable units that they really desperately needed in this community, and the taxpayers are already getting their money back because there's interest even on the loans. So those are getting paid back, and you can finance it sustainably in a way that doesn't cost the taxpayer, and that the state doesn't need to put up billions of dollars, just to keep it running. It's owned privately. The American Legion maintains it and keeps it running. It has their own system, for making sure everybody pays their rent or fixing things. I don't know the specifics of that, but it's not an added burden onto the city, right? It's only an improvement for the city because it helps us address the housing crisis. Does that make sense?
Yes, but if you look, for example, at the Green in Chicago,
Sure.
that was a disaster from anybody's perspective,
Sure.
in part because the Chicago Housing Authority, which owned all of the public housing in Chicago, was not equipped and funded to properly maintain
Right.
those apartment buildings the way that a private landlord would be expected to maintain a private apartment complex.
Right.
So,
Well, I can't speak specifically to the structure of something in Chicago. I'm in Virginia.
right, I understand that.
But that's why I hear what you're saying. It could be an extra burden on the government, and they might not do a good job if there's tons of new public housing that they're in charge of maintaining all of a sudden, right? That's why I really love YIGBY. I really love giving private organizations like the VFW or the American Legion that have a charter from Congress but are their own independent organization, the agency to add more housing if they want, right? It should be up to them and on their own land.
Right, but then they have the responsibility to keep it decent and habitable.
Yes. Which, to your point, Jane, it sounds like, your friend at the Methodist church there, they're doing an awesome job maintaining it.
They are,
And it's wonderful
She
because
can't
they
ask
really
for
care.
anything. They don't take care of her. She's not
Yeah.
there. She doesn't want to be taken care of.
Sure.
That's why she's there.
So more of those things. And the best thing that we can do to unlock those kind of experiences is unlocking federal land for housing, financing more American Legion or VFW posts or these veteran organizations, financing more things for them in a way that's sustainable and doesn't actually cost the taxpayers in the long term, and just taking the housing crisis seriously on all levels.
I like the idea there too that it's multi-age.
Yes.
She's not in there with everybody else who's 80 and 90.
Yes.
There are people with families and all different ages, and they look out for her. And, she's inspirational, really.
It is.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for having me. If that's all the questions, I really appreciate it.
Well, we do require you to state for anyone interested your
Yes.
URL of your website so that
Okay.
if someone still wants to,
Yes,
read your stuff.
I'm Joe Schiarizzi. I'm still running in the new Virginia 7. Fingers crossed. Not holding my breath. And my website is votejoe.org. And if there is no district, then I look forward to working with all of you on affordable housing and other important issues in our community. So, thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Yes. Julie Farnam is the owner of Pandora's Intelligence LLC, which provides open source intelligence expertise and investigative services. She joined the U.S. Capitol Police as Assistant Director for Intelligence in October 2020. Prior to that, she spent 15 years in the Department of Homeland Security. Julie holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology from Simmons College and a Master's of Intercultural Relations from Lesley University. And without further ado, I give you Julie Farnam. And if you want to pause for just 1 minute while the food is being dispensed, maybe that'll.
They're passing out everyone's food, so I'm just going to hold for just a second.
And I apologize for that.
No, that's
One
okay.
of you are undivided attention. So we're all right. So please continue. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Farnam. I am running for county board. I have 2 young daughters in Arlington Public Schools in Oak Ridge and Dunstan. And like many people in Arlington, I can barely afford to live here anymore. And I do worry about what it's going to be like for my daughters when they get older. As you said in the introduction, I do own my own business here in Arlington. It's a small business. I employ 5 people. And that's 5 families that I'm helping to feed, 5 jobs that I've created in Arlington. We do investigative intelligence, so I am a licensed private investigator, so I know everyone's secrets. But before that, I worked for the Capitol Police. I was assistant director and then director of intelligence. I was there on January 6th, and yes, I did write the intelligence report that warned them of January 6th. And before that, I was with the Department of Homeland Security for a little over 15 years. And I worked my way up from a GS6 when I started, all the way up to a senior executive. So I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets. I've managed hundreds of people. I know how to write policies. I also have been involved in the community. I was vice president of the Arlington Ridge Civic Association. I was my precinct captain. I used to chair the Women's Caucus for the Arlington Dems. I'm president of my HOA now. I foster kittens for the Animal Welfare League. I have 4 kittens right now, so if anyone wants a kitten, come see me. But my campaign is really focused on a few things that I think are really important to the people of Arlington. One is being fiscally responsible. Raising our taxes cannot be the first thing that the county board considers. We need to look at generating new sources of revenue and also what programs can we cut. So for example, tickets. If we raise our ticket prices to match that in DC, and I know this because I've received my fair share in DC, that generates millions of dollars of revenue. Just that one change, not issuing more tickets, just raising the price of parking tickets, for example. For things that we could cut, I think the food scrap program, it's a good program. I see the benefits of it. Do we need to be spending $300,000 a year right now on that? Right? You know, I mean, it's a tough time fiscally for people, and we need to look at where we can cut back. And I think that's a program that we could probably cut. I also care about housing. I think housing is a human right. I don't like the way the county has been handling it because I don't think it will at all create affordability and equity in housing. And that is the biggest problem I have. I know that we have a tendency, not just in Arlington, in the country as a whole, to like divide people up into binary groups. You're either for it or against it. And I think that does us a disservice because there are places where we can find common ground and get to the same goals. I think we all care about affordability and equity in housing. How we get there is, we differ on how we get there. But I think with housing in particular, there are 3 things that are really contributing to high housing prices here in Arlington and beyond. One is the supply and demand argument, which EHO seeks to address. The problem is that Arlington, because of our location, there's always going to be demand. And I don't know if we could build enough to outpace what the demand is. And we've seen that already with some homes that have been knocked down and been built into multifamily homes, but they're selling for even more than what they were when they sold originally. So like on South Troy Street North, they knocked down a single family home, built a duplex. Each side of that duplex is selling for $1.6 million. That's not achieving more affordability. South Monroe Street, another small home sold for about $500,000, duplex built, and this has nothing to do with the EHO, it's already zoned for that. Renting for $4,700 a month. Again, like that's more than my mortgage, so it's not creating affordability. So if we really want to create equity and affordability, we need to change it. It cannot be just wave the magic policy wand and all our housing problems are fixed, because it doesn't work like that. The county, I will say, be a little critical of them, they took a very lazy approach to a very complex problem. And they sold it like it's going to create affordability and equity when, as it stands now, it will not. Because the other 2 things that affect housing that are beyond Arlington's control is the gap between incomes and housing prices have grown exponentially over the past few decades. That's a national issue. The other issue is developers outbidding individuals to buy homes. And then when they resell it, it's much, much more expensive. There is a bill in Congress right now to address that issue. I don't think it's going to pass, but at least it's acknowledgement that that is an issue, and it is certainly a very big issue here in Arlington. So that's what I think about. And on the part about equity, because it came up in the previous speaker, you know, say racial segregation housing was outlawed years ago. And so if it was just a matter of the law or the policy, then we wouldn't have the problems that we have in inequity in home ownership now. But we do still have the problem. So just putting words on paper is not really getting at the heart of what is causing these inequities. And I think every time we knock down a house and build a McMansion or build something that is, you know, going to sell for much, much more than what it was originally, we're driving housing prices up now, which is what we're doing in Arlington. We're seeing, I think you mentioned about the McMansions, knocking them down, building these huge houses. That raises housing prices. So what I think we need to do is we need to look at lot coverage and preserving smaller homes, preserving the footprint of homes. Like if you knock something down, leave it a smaller home, even if you want to rebuild it, because that's going to keep prices down. And also, every time we knock down a home and whatever goes up next, whether it be multifamily or single family, if it's for rent instead of home, that gets to the point of we're shrinking the supply of homes for sale in Arlington, and that also raises the prices. And we see that quite a bit, and I think that's one of the issues with EHO, because I think a lot of those fourplexes, sixplexes are going to be for rent and not for sale. And then that doesn't help anyone who wants to buy a home in their 20s or 30s. Okay, so that's strategic housing and my approach to housing. I also care a lot about safety for everyone in the community. And that means making sure that we invest in our first responders, both our firefighters and our police force. But also safety to me means making sure everyone in the community feels safe, including our immigrant community. They've been attacked over the past year or so. And I think we do need to make sure that we protect them and do what we can do to help everyone in the community. And then the last point is about good governance. I do think we need to change our county board structure. I'd like to see a hybrid of both at-large and district representation. Part of that is at-large representation was created to dilute minority voices. And so I think people in your neighborhood know your neighborhood better than anyone else, which is why I'd like to see a hybrid of at-large and district. I also think our county manager should be elected. There needs to be more accountability in the county manager's office and more oversight. And yeah, so those are the 4 things that I'm going to be focused on. And I do have a lot of ideas, and I'm happy to share them. I don't want to talk for too long. But what questions do you guys have for me?
Well, I'll go with the first
Okay.
question. Okay, so, you know, I don't know how long you've been in the Arlington Ridge Association, but there was a controversy a few years ago when they redesigned Arlington Ridge Road to add more, I guess I'd call them traffic islands and calming devices and things like that. And it got to the point where most residents had not heard or consulted about the project. They apparently only heard about it after it had been approved.
Right.
And I was wondering what your views were on community input, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think it's specific to that. I think it's a whole host of things that we don't engage well with the community. The county, their approach to communicating and engaging the community is more like send out an email survey. Whereas I think it would be helpful if they go to more civic association meetings. They meet people where they're at. Because a lot of times these things are in the works for maybe sometimes years, and then people don't find out about it until, like, you know, they're breaking ground on whatever the situation is. And they say, well, I didn't know about it. And then the county's like, well, we've been talking about it for 10 years. That's a communications failure on the county's part. if people don't know about it until the last minute. So like we have to go out into the community, away from our computers, away from our desks, and meet people where they are to talk to them and get the input. And I'd also like to see, in the interest of transparency, that the county adjudicate comments that they receive from the public, like the federal government does with, rulemaking, not to get too wonky. But I want them to say, like, okay, we got 10 comments, 5 of them were on this topic, and we incorporated them into the proposal. 2 were on this, and we didn't incorporate them because of this. That gives feedback to the community. That builds trust in the community because they know that their comments were considered and heard and deliberated, and then the county made an informed decision. Right now, we don't have that transparency, and it's not limited to Arlington, but there's a complete lack of trust in our government, and it exists here, it exists beyond here too, but some of that, like communication and community building, could go a long way in building that trust.
You also mentioned that you're a officer of a condominium, and I want you to reflect, if you could, on to the degree you think the Arlington government is helpful or supportive or assistive of condominiums, and also, condominiums in America these days have very bad reputations. They're dumped on YouTube videos and so on. And it seems to me that in some ways the condominiums are the lowest level, the first level of local government, even before the county level.
Yeah, it is. I live in a townhouse actually, but we have 130 homes. So I live in missing middle housing. But we have 130 homes in our HOA. And yes, HOAs do have a bad reputation, and I have seen some that are like bad. I try not to have that sort of mentality in what we do. I think I have a great board. Everyone just re-upped for another year, so I count that as a success. But I will say, when I got, when I started the role as president, it took a little while to clean up some of that attitude, because some people think they should be all up in your business. We had a big controversy when I started about flower pots in someone's yard. You know what? In the general scheme of all the things going on in the world, I don't care what your flower pot looks like. And so we have to think about what's priority and what's not priority, and where do you pick your battles and where don't you? Because my goal as the HOA president is to have a great community where everyone feels welcomed and they like their neighbors and things like that. And so fostering that sort of community. But that takes sometimes speaking up. And when you have those people whose full-time job is to complain about stuff, addressing that with them. And I've taken people in the community out for coffee and say, hey, listen, this isn't helpful. We appreciate your passion, but this is a community and we all have to live together.
But in some cases, for example, in my condo where I've been on the board off and on for decades, we have a $3 million a year budget, and we run the utilities.
Yes.
And all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit more than a townhouse community. There are times when we really could do a much better job of working with the county. We had, for example, true water leaks. We had to call the county to come out and investigate.
We just had that too, actually.
Okay. So this is really, as much of a maintenance interface as it is between VDOT and the Arlington County.
Right, exactly.
And you need a sincere partner to work with you.
Yes, not only that, someone who's responsive. Because I know with our water leak, it took about 2 weeks it wasn't gushing water, but still, that was water that we were paying for. And it took 2 weeks for the county to come out. So we need a county that's responsive. And we need a county that's engaged. And I understand, this is a big place. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of needs. But to have that liaison, and maybe that is dedicating a person within the county to be that liaison and make sure that these issues are getting addressed and followed up on as issues.
Do other people have questions?
Yes.
I do. as part of your whole everything, please include renters. I used to be a homeowner, but I'm
Yes.
a renter now, and I was talking to Joe at the beginning. I'm, I think the oldest person in my building, but regardless, I feel badly for all these people, 30s and 40s. They pay huge amount of rent.
Absolutely.
The rent rates really high every year, goes
Yep.
up and up and up.
Yep.
And it costs a lot to move, and so some people don't move. They won't be able to afford a house, even if, there was affordable housing out there, they wouldn't be able to pay the down payment without being ridiculous.
Yeah.
They can raise the rent at any time.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
For any amount they want to, nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to rent before I owned in Arlington. I rented in Arlington as well. So I agree with you. So 2 points to that. One, when our taxes are raised or property taxes are raised, that affects renters too, because the owners of that building are going to pass that tax on to renters, and rent is going to go up. I know that there's been a lot of talk about, Arlington's rental rate last year going down a little bit, but it mirrors where it went down nationally. So I wouldn't take a whole lot of stock into that because
went down.
No.
The apartment is no better. In 8 years, it's not 8 years better.
Right.
And it's
It
not
really-
it's not the building. They can take care of it as best they can, but what are you being charged for?
Right, exactly. And I think that's where we need to, and I would like to see the county do more of this, engage our state level representatives. Because I'd like to do something like what Montgomery County did to put a cap on how much it can be raised.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
But we can't do it here in Arlington. The state has to allow us to do it because of the Dillon rule. So I think we should, the county, be better engaged with the people who represent us at the state level to make some of these changes
That's a
that will
great
impact.
idea.
You made a comment that what I thought I heard was racial discrimination in housing was outlawed some time ago.
Right.
And I think that was the extent of what you said.
Nobody said it still exists, but it still
All right,
exists.
good.
Yeah,
I
there is
did
the
not
rest of
hear
it.
that
Yeah.
part, and that
Yes.
is, I was gonna say, that is not.
No, but it still
It's
exists.
a
Yeah.
comment by itself with a stand.
Yeah.
Because you're terribly against mixing middle. I believe if you go and, like, for instance, talk to the NAACP, I don't want to speak for them, but what I have heard at the meetings is that it is a deeply felt. I mean, one reason I am so strongly for it is because it is my understanding that it means a great deal to people of color to have that message of racism abolished. And so I would not want to see it put back in a way.
Well, private equity is buying those properties.
Oh,
Yeah.
Selling them for $1 million each.
it is not an affordable housing
Right.
measure.
Not
It
at all.
is an increased housing or a different type of housing supply measure, which the theory is will eventually help to reduce the cost of housing overall. Whether that will work, I don't know, and I'm not, I think you said you don't think it will, and I'm fairly skeptical of it. But as an equity issue, if it means something to the people of this community who have faced discrimination.
Right.
I mean, Arlington was essentially founded on discrimination.
Right. Yeah.
So if it means something to them, then it needs to stay the way it is now, or be made even better.
Right. Well, and I think the made better is the key to that, because the way it is now, I don't believe it's going to create more equity in housing. I think the barriers that exist today to having a more diverse community and allowing more people to own their own home is not the same as it was, 100 years ago. So the policy that the county put into place is essentially looking at a problem that existed then and not looking at the problem as it exists today. And if we want to have equity in housing and we want to have a more diverse community and allow more Black homeowners to be able to buy a home or be able to buy a home, we need to do something different. What I'd like to see is something like DC has, like the Black Home Ownership Strike Force, which has like down payment assistance, low interest loans, things like that, that really address that equity issue that Arlington is not addressing right now. So if we do things like that, also looking at like community trusts, things like that, those sorts of things will create more equity in actuality, not in theory. What we have is theory, what I want is actuality.
And then if I could just follow
Sure.
on, because you also just said, that sounds great to me.
Mhm.
But you also mentioned wanting to look for places to cut, and that is legitimate, that is, something that should be done. But what you just said, like the strike force thing, sounds like you're talking about taking resources and allocating them there.
Mhm.
And I suppose, my problem is, and I filled out some of the surveys that, the county has, I like all the programs Arlington has for the seniors,
Mhm.
for the,
Yeah.
for gymnastics,
Right. Yeah.
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics.
I had no kids, but,
Yeah.
but I
Well, I
like.
came in, I thought we were kids.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it exists. I don't want to cut anything.
Right. Agreed.
It may have to happen, but.
Well, but that's where I think the fiscal responsibility comes in, because one, we don't have a strategic plan in the county. The school board does, but the county board does not. And two, like, we haven't prioritized what we should be spending on and what we shouldn't. And so if gymnastics is really important, and I know that's a hot button topic this year, like, okay, then we prioritize that. But what is maybe like the food scrap program? Maybe that's not priority right now. You know what I'm saying?
It's important to the environment, because if we take some of those waste out of solid waste disposal, you're creating less methane.
And are you doing it? We live in a house, right?
No, I live in a townhouse and I do it on my own because I'm too lazy to walk around the corner to the public one, so I pay for it. I pay to have it done privately myself because I'm lazy.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do
think you're lazy.
it. I do it, and I do it.
But we need to think, to your point, what are needs to have and what are nice to have. And then once we have that priority set, then we can make sure that we're investing in the programs that we want to invest in, whether it be gymnastics or maybe everyone loves food scraps and that's something we want to prioritize. It's not for me necessarily to decide, it's for the community to decide. But back to the housing, like if we want to have something like the Black Homeownership Strike Force, and that's something we believe in as a community, which I think we do, then we need to find a way to either create new revenue to be able to fund that, or figure out what are nice to haves that we don't need right now and invest in something like that.
Okay, but how successful is the current county's communication mechanisms and engagement mechanisms to get the people of the county to really collaborate on those issues?
It's not good. It is not good. I'll be honest. It is not good. And like I said, we need to go to where the people are. So we have to think outside the box. Like, yeah, there are formal things like civic associations where we can go to the meetings. And I've been in my civic association, active in my civic association for many, many years. And I think I can count on one hand how many times people from the county board came to talk to us. So that, but then there's less formal things, like maybe there's international night at Oak Ridge. It would be great if someone at the county board was there just like talking to someone, or the county had a table there about whatever initiative they wanted to communicate and engage the community. Things like that. There was something last year, something about transportation, and the county had a table there. This was a good example of and they asked us, what intersections do you think need attention? And they asked us to put a sticker on a map. They had a huge map of the county. That's an example of where we were engaging with people on the street level. And that's what we should be doing more of. Less, I think online surveys have their place, but they cannot be the be all and end all of everything.
Not everybody has it.
Right, exactly. Any other questions for me?
Thank you for coming to.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We're maybe
Thank
a small group, but we have a lot of.
That's okay. Actually, I have flyers. I'll go run out and get them in the car.
But before you do that,
Yes.
can you state for the record what your website is
Yes.
and how people can get involved in your campaign if they want?
Sure. My website is julieforarlington.com.
FOR or four, the number.
No, the FOR, the letters. julieforarlington.com. So hopefully easy to remember. Everyone spells my last name wrong, so that's why I didn't put my last name in the website. And then my email address is julieforarlington@gmail.com. So very easy to remember. I have a Facebook page, I have a TikTok page, I have a LinkedIn page, and I would love to hear from you guys. And I will get the flyers because it has all that information right now, so you don't have to remember it. All right, thank you.
Great, and I will right at the microphone here. Okay, so our next meeting is on the second Tuesday of June, and I honestly don't know who we're going to have there yet. I've gone from a bounty of prospective lunch guests to a withering on the vine group of prospective lunch guests, but we still do have to hear from our school board candidates and our.
You want me to come back? Just come.
Oh, sure. We also have at least one other county board candidate we haven't had yet as a guest, and I suppose we could figure out some way to lure Don Byer here. He's always been very good to us. And I want to thank both Julie and Joe for coming today. And if there's nothing further, I will see you next month. Thank you.
You're out for a month.